From the betting odds being just so slightly in Belal's favor, to how Burns might be able to crush his opponent. Here are all the predictions for Belal Muhammad versus Gilbert Burns. Now, the odds aren't exactly the most concrete way to figure out how a fight will go. At most, it's a general indicator of what the public opinion on the two fighters are, mixed with a general averaging of their statistical achievements. Of course, the problem here is pretty obvious. The numbers you get for betting odds don't include the millions of tiny factors that can make up who will perform better on any given day. For example, something as small as what someone had for breakfast one morning might just end up being what gives them a little extra push. Stats and numbers will never encompass the hunger each fighter feels going into the ring, with their eyes fixed on future prizes. For the sake of completeness, however, the current odds for the fight are plus 138 for Muhammad Belal and minus 178 for Gilbert Burns. For all the non-gamblers out there, what these odds basically mean is that you can win $138 against a $100 bet on Belal, and you'd only win $100 off a $178 bet on Belal. The number disparity isn't too big here, meaning that it's a pretty closely matched fight. Burn, interestingly enough, has had negative odds on 3 of his last 5 fights, and only lost 1 of the 3. So don't you count him out just yet. But what do the experts think? One of the most popular UFC trends is that whenever there's a hot new fight announced, fans will rush to YouTube to see what experts think the outcome will be. Well, for the Burns versus Belal fight, it looks like many analysts think that Burns might just take the victory. A lot of this has to do with the context behind the fight. Muhammad and Gilbert are both fighting in the 170-pound category, but Belal himself has said that he's currently working extremely hard to cut weight, since he's currently sitting at about 190, rather than his usual 177 pounds, meaning that he has a ton of weight to cut at extremely short notice, given that the fight is in just a few days. Drastic weight cuts are one of the most difficult things a fighter can do, as it involves essentially starving and dehydrating themselves for ages in the lead up to fights. For many, this drastic weight cut can negatively affect their fight performance, causing even experienced fighters to appear slow and sluggish compared to their usual selves. On top of that, Belal accepted a 5-round contract, meaning he might end up having to go the distance against a fitter, fresher Gilbert Burns. Of course, some people are particularly appreciative of the upcoming fight, with many pros seeing it as a battle that will be remembered. Like I've said, short notice fights and weight cuts are some of the biggest hurdles a UFC fighter has to cross, and other pros are particularly appreciative of both Burns and Muhammad taking up the challenge. One such fighter is Sean O'Malley, a UFC bantamweight superstar, who had nothing but praise for both fighters. To him, just the idea of 2 fighters taking up such a difficult fight on such short notice is a sign of 2 true contenders. In fact, he straight up called 2 of them gangsters, especially since they decided to have a full 5-round bout. In terms of predictions, O'Malley seems to think the fight can go pretty much either way. On one hand, he notes the sheer toughness of Burns, who won at UFC 287 just a few weeks before the announcement of the new fight, showing sheer determination, perseverance, and skill. On the other hand, the pro couldn't discount the kind of performances we've seen from Belal, who is currently on a jaw-dropping 8-fight win streak. It's pretty clear that even top-class fighters aren't sure exactly what will happen when the fireworks erupt within the octagon. Both fighters have had incredible runs recently, with Burns in particular going on a non-stop tear through the whole division. Gilbert Burns has proven himself to be one of the most vicious fighters in the entirety of the UFC. He's been fighting pretty much non-stop for a year now, and only a couple of weeks ago, he became the man that forced Masvidal to retire after defeating him at UFC 287. The man currently stands at a stunning 22-5-0 record and has very clearly been on the warpath in search of that elusive welterweight title shot. Not only is he an excellent striker, he's also an experienced grappler, being a 3-time world champion and a global gold medalist for his grappling game, a skill that clearly extends to the UFC. Given that he managed to submit Neil Magny in the first round of their bout, the man is also a knockout king and has gotten 6 KOs throughout his career, and is clearly looking to do the same against his newest opponent. In terms of motivation, Burns is most certainly hungrier for the victory than anyone can imagine. This fight is basically a way to decide who gets to take the title shot, and I can't think of anyone who has been working for that shot more than Burns. He's looking to bring some serious thunder to the fight, and has made it very clear that he's supremely confident in his skills going in, declaring that Belal stands absolutely no chance against him. However, it's impossible to discount just how good Belal is. Belal Muhammad might just be one of the most technical fighters in the history of the UFC, a spot of praise that he's more than earned, given the incredible win streak that he's currently on, having defeated the last 8 of his opponents. The interesting thing about Belal is that he's not interested in flashy finishes and knockouts like his peers. Instead, he focuses on dominating his opponents through precise technique, racking up the points through surgical strikes and quick, efficient grappling takedowns. This fight is extremely important for Belal. He's already been passed up for the title shot once, and very clearly feels like he deserved a chance. No wonder he agreed to so many restrictive conditions for the fight. Of course, the fighter also has quite a bit to prove. He hasn't taken an actual fight in quite some time, almost 200 days now. Usually when fighters are on the sidelines for too long, you start to hear whispers that they've lost their touch, or have just straight up become out of shape and rusty. For his part, Muhammad seems to be pretty calm going in, despite the expectations, since he's supremely confident in his ability to handle Burns. Muhammad has made absolutely no secret of how confident he is going into his fight with Gilbert Burns. According to the fighter, he simply outclasses Burns in every conceivable category of the fight game. He's already fought and defeated able grapplers like Demian Maia, incredible strikers such as Wonder Boy, and has even defeated Sean Brady, one of the most dominant fighters in his division. This shows that the Warrior has absolutely no issue in adjusting his game plan from opponent to opponent, varying his style and adapting to literally every possible situation that can be thrown at him. He's made it absolutely clear that he thinks Burns just doesn't have the technical skills to handle him. In fact, he believes he has a counter for everything his opponent could possibly bring to the table, saying that he's been studying his game plan and has it down to a science at this point, whereas he's confident that Burns has no idea what he's about to bring to the table. Basically, Belal is banking on his superior strategy and legendary technical ability to overcome his opponent. But enough pretense. What are the possibilities for how the fight will go? Both fighters seem to have a certain set of conditions that they need to fulfill in order to secure victory. Gilbert Burns is going to have to play to his strengths and be as aggressive as possible from the word go. If he wants to win, he's going to have to make sure that Belal doesn't have a second to breathe, keeping his back against the metaphorical rope at all times, and keep his eyes open for that inevitable slip-up, which he can take advantage of in order to bounce his opponent's head off of the canvas. Given that Muhammad Belal is just coming off of a vicious weight cut, this rush and destroy strategy might be exactly what Burns needs to penetrate his defensive shield. Muhammad, on the other hand, would benefit from sticking to his strengths and playing the patience game. It's clear that power and knockouts aren't his forte, so engaging Burns at close quarters looking for a fast victory would be basically suicidal. Instead, his best bet would be to use his jabs to keep pressure on his opponent, waiting patiently for the moment that Gilbert decides to lose his patience and catch any kind of overextension by turning it into a quick pivoting takedown for points. He does have superior technique, so he might just be able to pull off a decision victory. Of course, in the fighting game, anything can happen. From discussing what Burns can do to achieve victory, to looking at how the betting odds are in Muhammad's favor, those are all the predictions for Muhammad versus Burns.